All right. Hello and welcome back to another happy hour. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Frayne, creative director here at Backflip. And we would have started a second ago, but John just walked away from his camera. So that's usually where his introduction comes in. But we'll skip John's introduction. Oh, there, I see him running. Here he is. Watch, it'll be like he was here the whole time.
Hey,
there he is.
Sitting here, yeah.
Other co-host, John Shoemaker, also co-creative director here at Backflip. But today, we've got joining us another Ryan in our parade of Ryans. So we're really excited about this. Let me get you on here. There he is, the man, the myth, the legend, Ryan Orr. How's it going, man?
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Great to be on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming. And now I can actually ask you questions instead of just awkwardly being like, hey, what's up?
How are you?
Yeah.
Nice to see you. Your audio sounds great, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So this is a happy hour too. So
That's
I
right.
think it's important to, mention kind of what we're drinking. And there's never any pressure for anyone watching or our guests to drink. But I do see that you brought the proper form of libation. What do you got there?
Always a Guinness. Bling, right?
Oh my gosh. I'm very jealous right now because I'm just drinking some straight ture-de-Ryan tequila, which is the best tequila in the world.
Okay, it's really some watered down motor oil. I didn't have any. I'm sorry. I'm just faking the whole thing.
That's what it tastes like when it hits your mouth.
It depends on how many you've had, I think.
Yeah. And what do you got, John?
The reason I am out of breath is, apart from being out of shape, is that I was running down the hall to retrieve. It's a reprise. It's orange. It's the happiest color.
Nice.
And it's the orange chocolate porter from Carbon 4. See, it's like it's an experimental can. Like it's just got a label on it. It's a small batch thing.
Is that your favorite because of your hair?
Yeah, I always, everything I have has to be orange or ginger flavored.
Yeah.
Because of my people.
So now on that point, I want to get into Ryan here, learn more about you. For those who don't know you, I put the title as Ryan Orr, editor. I know you're senior editor at DPhilms and upcycle artist. So can you just give us kind of who you are?
Who I am. As you've already mentioned, I've been an editor now for a number of years. I've been with DPhilms almost 17 this year. My career spans much longer than that. I actually got started at a very early age, about 17, working in broadcast news. Kind of went through those ropes and really wanted to get out of that and get into better production. And then have been editing ever since. So do a wide variety of things, just like you guys do, everything from live streaming to regional, local ads in between, social media content, long form, short form, educational, instructional, pretty much everything in between. Have a great crew of 7. We've all worked together, most of us, for a really long time. So we're like family, literally and figuratively. We've seen each other through thick and thin, and we make sure that we get things done. So, the nice part is, as we usually say, in this business, is that it sure beats working, because we get to do and see so many cool things. Had I chosen a different route, I'd have never gotten to do the stuff I've gotten to do, whether that's seeing how things are made or even just, meeting some pretty cool people along the way. Unfortunately, somewhere in there, I met Jonathan. I don't know if that was a mistake or not, but here I am. No, just kidding.
Yeah, the best intern ever.
Sure. No, just kidding. No. And then on the upcycling end, when I'm not doing my day job and doing all those things, I basically have a company called Reform, which is my artistic venture in which I do functional and modern art that all revolves around upcycling. That really was influenced heavily by the video and film industry because, especially when I started, there were no paths for old equipment. There were no paths for a lot of technology other than the trash, or it was doomed to be sitting in a storeroom for forever. So, you would see servers and systems and cameras and all these things just sitting around. And so out of that came a number of different things, one of which is my Crunching Numbers coffee table, which is upcycled Mac G4 or G5 that is made into a chic new coffee table. I've also done a lot of commissioned work. That's really, I think, the core of a lot of the things I do. Oh, there's a picture right there. Mm-hmm. A lot of people have something in their mind that's, sentimental or something that they've always wanted to see a reuse for. So I get approached a lot with a lot of different things, and they go, hey, how do we give this new life? What can we make out of it? How can we, make it into something cool? And it can be anything from, as you see there, a coffee table to a piece of wall art to anything in between. It's been a lot of fun because it lets me exercise that artistic side of me that's always been present, things that you can't do on a computer, things you have to do, in the physical real world. And so it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. What kind of, we'll circle back to the editing because I think we've got a lot of production people who tune in as well. But this is most fascinating to me because it's just something that I know nothing about, and it looks amazing. So, like, how did you get into this? Have you always been kind of an artist, or was it something that came later?
Always been an artist first. I mean, art had a heavy influence on me getting into this business. Starting in grade school and moving on from there, when you start working with ceramics and paint and all those types of things. And some of them I wasn't as good at. I mean, being a painter really wasn't my thing, but I enjoyed paint. I enjoyed drawing, but I wasn't an awesome, artist. But a lot of the physical things like photography, where you take a picture, and at that time you still worked in the dark room and all of that physical process, wood shop, metal shop, and all that other stuff, just making things out of different materials and, kind of understanding each of their personalities, just like human beings. Each has their temperaments, each has their pros and their cons. And then I think that kind of stuck with me as I got to that point of just, not really ever being one to waste. That was just something that's always been in my DNA since I was little, because we didn't grow up that way. It was always, find another use, find another home, make your trash into treasure some way. Yeah. And so that's really always been very deep, and that's how that came out of it. So the Crunching Numbers coffee table, for example, was my first item, and it went through many, many different iterations, many dammits, if you will, of getting it wrong. And, once it's messed up, I had to wait until another one died at that time. So it was a lot of that. And then from there, just kind of starting to pursue and talk to people about getting materials and figuring out all the things in between until I had something that really worked.
Yeah, I love the concept too, because my wife and I both, we're working on getting things out of the house because we like to keep things, whatever. But those like sentimental or nostalgic things are hard to get rid of.
They are.
But then what happens is you end up just having it sitting there, like doing nothing.
Right.
It's not art. It's also not functional. It's just there because I have this memory about it.
Right.
And you're like, really, I should just get rid of this thing, or whatever. Like, so it's really cool that you are making use out of it, not in a cool upcycle way, but basically some of the nostalgic things like toys that I had that I was keeping around. We just made the decision to just start letting the kids play with them. Be like, it's going to get destroyed. Let's just get a few more memories with it, and then
I'll make new ones.
But I like this idea for other things that aren't, that you can't just use again as the same thing, as a toy or whatever.
Yeah, and it even just comes down to simple things. The old idea of, make an output and input, and how do you just take something that someone else would see as trash or just, waste, and how do you kind of flip that on its head and go, okay, you're right. It doesn't have a use anymore. Is this? It's done. But if I strip out some useful parts, or I think about it in a different way and combine it with some other pieces for a new recipe, now it has a new life again. And certainly for some people, I mean, we're very spoiled here that we do have electronics recycling programs and things like that, but a lot of people don't. And so a lot of this stuff is, it just gets chucked.
Mm-hmm. And I was wondering too, like, I always think business wise, and you had talked about commission art, like, what is that like? Because at some point, in a business, you have to come up with a form of how you can sell something, and then you can repeat that. But it seems like with this and commission art, everything is so new and so different. How challenging is that?
In one sense, it's no different than what we live and breathe every day. We start every project with a client with a blank canvas, right? And of course, you go through a lot of the same conversations. What do you like? What do you not like? Give me some examples of things that you've always admired and hated, whatever it is, so that you get an idea of taste and personalities and things like that, or sometimes even just to find out some meanings. I'm working on a commission piece right now, actually, that I have a friend who he's actually bought several of my pieces, and I've actually done quite a few commission pieces for him. He has a technology firm that does web development and things like that, and also runs a wing that does and serves specifically the dental market, the dental IT end of things. So, we're talking nerd speak, and we're talking, a lot of things that aren't always glamorous, shall we say, but certainly are very vital to our world. But with the systems that they install and the things that they do, they often end up with a lot of extra materials, especially now with touchscreens. You don't need mice, you don't need keyboards, some of those things. So conversation kind of started with that, he had 200, 300, 400 keyboards sitting in storage. And so, the gears kind of start worrying a little bit, like, okay, well, what could we do with 200 or 300, 400 keyboards? So what started off on a proof of concept of this is kind of what we started with, just the idea of, what can we do with this, has turned into, I have the panels I'm working on in my shop right now. The piece will be 6 feet tall and 12 feet wide. So it's going to be essentially one giant, massive grid of keyboard keys. Now, the cool part is that within that are hidden our sayings that are meaningful to the company. And of course, the artist has to have a spin on some things. So there's pop culture references, there's, all kinds of things that, give you an idea of when it was made and things like that. But the other nice part is that there's no adhesives, there's no glues. So this piece is also dynamic. So the nice part is that someone else could pop some keys off of another keyboard, hide a saying in it. Have a client come in, grab some keys, hide a word in there. Let's see if somebody can find it. Maybe keeping it within reason, of course, as to what you hide. But yeah. So in total, between the 3 panels, there's 18,000 holes that have to have keys put in them.
Yeah, I think I saw that on your website, and I was like, oh my gosh, that is insane. And I would love to have it.
Yeah, I actually need to start doing some days because it is taking me a year to get a lot of the things fleshed out and fabricated. The pandemic and other things really, really blew out the timeline. So I am just now starting to really put the piece together and give it its personality. But each panel has over 6,000 spots, so 6,000 keys per piece. So the 300 keyboards I started with won't even cover hardly half of that. So I have another stage yet to go of getting more of them and putting it all in place. But when it gets done, it's going to look so cool.
That's awesome. Yeah,
just stealing 1 key per week from each colleague's keyboard low enough that they don't quite notice
for thousands of weeks.
Yes. Yeah. Here's, however many Let's see, you said a week, huh? Yeah. So this would take you a while.
I think so. And I was looking because I think you have some posts on your Facebook page sharing those details and some examples of the keyboard that you're putting together, or the installation, the art piece you're putting together.
Mhm.
And somehow, like later in the day, I came back and I can't find it now, but I started getting advertised for this photographer, Van Ward or something, who's doing exactly that with recycled products, and that just got me into a whole world. And it's fascinating. Like you had said, now that we have touchscreens and you don't need mice, and well, we don't need several cables. You don't need a cable between your computer and the screen and this and that.
Right.
And like how much waste is being created. So I started really to appreciate that, upcycle, that capability to take it and reuse it for something, because otherwise it just goes in a landfill, and that's not great.
Yeah. And again, like I said, we're very fortunate where I'm at that we have a recycling path for that. So any of the things even that don't make the cut in my shop, if you will, they go to an e-waste facility and they strip it, recycle it, and move it on. But, again, for a lot of people, your keyboard breaks, throw it away, that's all you can do. So yeah, or even, gosh, our cameras or old decks or whatever, all that stuff just sits around. So, the nice part is that it's a very open, a very a blank canvas in the sense that it doesn't have to be technology driven. One of the pieces that you had showed earlier as well was made all out of typesetter block. It's old technology, but much, much different than keyboards of today by all means. But, again, it all just comes down to the personality of each person and the types of things they're looking to do, or maybe even just the challenge I'm trying to solve in terms of the space it's got to fit into, those types of things. So the writer's block bookshelf had to fit into a large double-sized window next to a desk, and it had to kind of look like they complemented each other. They're very old period specific desk, but they wanted something that was somewhat modern because they were more modern in their overall approach. So this piece was built specifically to fit right underneath that window so that you would have 2 rows of books without the books being exposed to the sun on the top shelf. But I played Tetris for a long, long time to get all those pieces to fit.
Yeah. And like, it's so amazing. And so like, how long does something like this take to create?
It all depends on the project. This one in particular took about 6 months. And the worst part of it is it took me the longest to get all those blocks cleaned than anything else. When I had acquired them, they had been in the attic of an old printing press, hadn't seen the, daylight in 50 years. And, they were dirty. So I had to figure out a way to get all the ink, all the residue, all that stuff off, and, get them all dry, make sure they didn't warp. So that was the hard part. The easy part was actually playing Tetris. Our NES skills came back to prove our parents wrong, that we could do something, functional from playing video games, right?
Yeah, that's basically the story of my life. Every time I have a triumph where I'm like, see, Mom, video games, like being a drone pilot.
That's right. Exactly. So yeah, I had to plan ahead for sure. I work with a wood shop and some other fabricators for some of the really, really hard stuff that I don't have room for in my shop to figure out. And I had some discussions with them up front in terms of, hey, this is what I want it to do. This is how I want it to fit. What do I need to make sure I'm considering? And so after we got through all that and I could get that all figured out, then it was go time. So got it all put together, got the pieces to the shop. We did final assembly and then delivered it. And so they still have this piece, and it's pretty cool because obviously it's also a conversation piece. People walk into that office and they go, "What's that? That's cool." So
have you been thinking already about what you're going to turn the old Avid into when
Well, a lot of those get turned into the coffee tables. If there are G4s and G5s, that's where they go. But there is some stuff. Truthfully, people will send me requests and they'll be like, "Hey, what do you think of this?" And there are times when I just have to say, "Hey, I got nothing." Some things just don't translate very well if they want them to be functional or something like that, or maybe it's going to take a lot more pieces to do, so it might take a lot longer. I've got another project I've been technically working on in a sense for many years, and it's just come down to one of those where we're just looking for the right stuff, and until we have it, it won't get made. But it's just, hey, we're going to keep our eyes out for some of these things, and once we've got, say, 2 or 3 dozen of them, we'll make something. But you never know when you're going to find them. They're just odds and ends and things, and it may never get made. But the part of the fun is just the fact that that you're on the lookout, and that you're giving that stuff a second life.
Yeah. Well, and you could buy them, but then that would defeat the purpose. Like buying it, ordering it new or something.
Well, and some of it you can't order new anymore. For example, with the old Macs, once they're gone, and more they're becoming relics that, unless I want to buy them on the open market and still working, which is kind of always a tough dilemma, because you don't want to decommission a working machine. You want it to kind of live its life out. But on the other hand, if somebody says, "Hey, I'm willing to go that route," then okay, fine. At least we know that it will get recycled. The guts will get recycled and processed and all those things. But you kind of wish you want to wait until it's kind of done before you do that. But more and more those are disappearing, and at some point, I probably won't be able to make them anymore.
Yeah, I've got one at home. We've got a comment here from Amanda Shoemaker, John's wife.
She
get my mom on it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, sure, her mom, basically she's channeled, it's very useful because she loves shopping. She loves rummage sailing and all of that. And so when we don't have a specific need, basically a lot of our friends will be like, "Hey, can you let your mom know that we're looking for some soccer shoes, size 5? What are you know?"
It's three green stripes. It's got to be just the right. Oh, nice. I think that might be able to become its own web series. Send mom out and see what she finds. Right.
Yeah. There's a bunch of Goodwills around here too, and we have a friend who his job is basically a YouTube show where he makes things out of old electronics. He made a automatic mask that would go up and go down when he wanted it on or off, which is really cool. That was one of his popular ones. But he goes to a Goodwill in Verona because that's where the rich people live. And so he gets all the stuff. Yes. Monday morning, 9:00 or whenever they open.
He's going to be all over you, though.
For sharing a secret. Yeah. No, it's fine. He has way more followers that he talks about that on Twitter. So he's already let the word out. But I love that, being able to find old stuff and, reuse it. And my wife, I like to joke that we've never bought one article of clothing for our children. We certainly have bought some, but most of it's traded or found at a yard sale. And we'll get just fancy, nice Sperry's or dress shoes. And she's like, "Yep, I got them for $1." I'm like,
for you or for the kids?
That is the best. No, they're kid clothes for me.
But yeah, it's I mean, we've done the same thing, and it's just kind of that common sense in terms of, well, if I want to be able to pay for college, I got to do it somehow. And this is probably one of the easiest ways because, clothing's expensive. It has a pretty short shelf life for kiddos anyway. Now for Jonathan, who's been wearing that exact same shirt since I met him.
I probably was wearing it. Well, I'm just with that phase. I always am struck by it. And I'll joke about it with Amanda. I'm like, I don't know if it's just that I've hit the phase in my life where it's not that long ago that I was growing out of things, so like your whole life up to a certain age is like the process of, oh, this is getting tight, time to move up to the next size, whatever. But then you hit this like unknown adulthood phase where and I'm like sounding like an older and older person.
Hopefully your size isn't changing that much.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
But like I'm sounding like an old person where I'm like looking at something like, what the heck? Why is this wearing out? And then Amanda will be like, well, you have had that for like 10 years.
Yeah, your Facebook memories come back and say, here's this thing from 20 years. Wait, what?
Why aren't these pants built to last for 20 years?
Exactly. You feel gypped at first, and then you realize, oh no, wait. I think they had a good run.
I spent $20 on them. I expect them to last the rest of my life.
$20, 20 years. What's wrong about that? Yeah, my wife.
Right.
I think she's finally gotten rid of all my clothes that were from pre-adult era. Like I might still have one more sweater that's super comfy. That's kind of torn in all these places, but it's just so big and baggy and comfy. Like I love it. But pants went out years ago, shirts went out forever ago, and final pieces have gone out over the last several years. And I actually kind of appreciate it too, because like that was maybe a thing that I didn't understand, and maybe we can finish this tangent on clothes, is wearing clothes that fit you. Like going through the 90s, everything was a style where it was all kind of goofy and big, and you kind of get stuck in a style. And so like I had shirts and I'm like, why am I wearing this? I look like a I don't know, like a rapper from the 90s or something,
I think I have probably got rid of all of them now, but I had shirts from like junior high that are too big for me now.
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah. Everybody's got one. I mean, I have one that, from our class graduation, same thing, and I put it on one day and realized, that the shoulders were like out here. And I'm like, okay, that definitely didn't fit me then.
Yeah.
And it sure as heck doesn't fit me now, and so, you suddenly realize how much, cuts and clothing has evolved, where, they finally got smart and went, oh yeah, guys don't want to wear a great big garbage sack. Can we make something that fits? Okay.
Yeah. Styles occasionally change. Well, and that's a thing as an adult, I realize as well, like no matter your body shape, just get something that fits, and you're going to look great, feel great and look great. And
own it. Exactly.
Yeah. Amanda has a great comment for you.
She's trolling.
I have no difficulty believing that Jonathan comes home and he just takes off one plaid shirt and puts another one on, just like Mr. Rogers.
That's true.
Slips his shoes off, puts some slippers on, bunny slippers probably.
Since Christmas, I've got some slippers that Amanda got for me. Yes, I go and I just change out of this into the house version of this.
Yeah, I can totally see it, and he's good.
Yeah, it's so nice too. He's got a couple newer, and I say newer, it might be like 5 years old, but like solid colors, with a trim cut. And I walk by and I'm like, hey, John, hey, something's different. You look really nice. What's going on?
I'm glad everybody has a journal of my because that way, I can keep track.
You look more modern today, Jonathan. That's nice.
Well, people identify the year that I got married. If I
exactly.
Yeah, it was so cool at the time, Amanda says. I was wondering too. So it sounds like you have, with the upcycling, it sounds like you kind of have a couple products that you can create, and maybe like the desk is one of them, and then you also do the commission stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm just curious kind of how that works as well. Like you said, you're collecting, you try to collect a bunch of stuff to see if you can make several.
Yeah, I mean, really, it just comes down to an idea initially. So you meet with someone, or they say, hey, I've always thought it would be cool if this or that, or that kind of thing. I have another friend of mine who he played baseball, as a kid growing up. And of course, depending on when and where you played baseball, a lot of people grew up with aluminum bats, say, versus wood ones, for example. But he has this collection of maybe half a dozen wood bats that were his dad's and his, and even one that was his grandpa's. And so I said, okay, well, if we can collect enough of these, we can make, like a nice tabletop, or we can do something. If you have a space to fill in your house, we can figure out some ways to think about these bats differently instead of just looking at them at face value. So a lot of it is just, meeting with somebody and kind of getting an idea of what the possibilities are. Where can I put this? What rules can I break? What rules do I have to stay within, in terms of their tastes? Are they conservative in their design, kind of their how their house is laid out and things like that. And, what colors they like or don't like. If they have kids, there's certain things maybe you don't want to have in the main room so that the kids don't trip over it, spill on it, ruin it, whatever. And then from there, it's a lot of back and forth in terms of kind of throwing out some ideas, and then eventually you have something. So a lot of it too, though, is also with commission work. Also, as I've been very lucky to get a lot of free reign, especially with this, the keyboard piece. My buddy's been very good about just kind of saying, hey, I'm not an artist, but you are. So I want you to interpret this how you want to interpret it, because I know you're going to come up with something really cool. So even though, he gave me the kind of that great big open path, even when it came down to the final end, I still showed him kind of my final sketches and said, this is what I'm going to do, just so there was no surprise. Mm-hmm. He's like, it's cool. Just do it. Let's just make it happen. Cool. I think more than anything, he's probably just happy to see 300-400 keyboards just go away.
Sure. Yeah.
He's like, that's great. Whatever. Just get these out of here. I'm just, he's gone. So that process started about a year ago. And then, with a lot of the challenges with the pandemic, both in terms of, places being open for business or their production schedules, or people who even can wrap their brains around this with me. I mean, the core of what I needed wasn't really hard. Essentially, it's taking these 3-foot by 6-foot panels of plastic and making them into Swiss cheese. But there were a lot of places that, who had the CNC capabilities, but they just couldn't wrap their brains around it if it wasn't like a machine. It wasn't something that they were already making and doing for other clients, and I'm like, hey, it doesn't matter. This is an art project. I just need you to do this. I just want this. Mm-hmm. So after enough searching and, enough phone calls, emails, smoke signals, found someone who could really understand that. And then, with enough back and forth and finalizing the technical ends, like, how close should these be so that they look right? Mm-hmm. And how many of these are going to fit on a rectangle? And so what that means in terms of the whole project. So then about 2 weeks ago, I got the final panels delivered to my door, and now I've been working on pushing these in one at a time.
Yeah.
One at a time.
Did you say you have kids?
I do.
That sounds like a great task for children to help with.
My daughter has been, in and out of it at times. She really liked the key pulling stage, where I could sit her down next to me with a screwdriver and say, take the keys off, honey. Okay, Dad. The other stages more lately, which is sorting, because some keys we can't use.
Sure.
And some of those she's like, yeah, forget that. I'm gonna go upstairs and watch cartoons. I'm good. But some of the assembly has been fun, because she's kind of seeing how it starts, and hiding words and things like that, and then how that suddenly turns into something to where she can't find the words that she helped me hide. So it's kind of cool like that.
Mm-hmm. I wonder too, with the keys, if you can get some of those non-English keys, the symbols, you could make like a design, like an ASCII design or something. That'd be really cool.
Yeah. Well, and what really was really interesting about this too, is that for this particular brand, they have 3 different manufacturers, which when I was pulling keys, I didn't really realize until I started my first round of assembly or sorting, which was, like space bars and the control keys, the Windows keys, the shift keys, all those that are not uniform. Those all got separated into separate bins so that I have just the main squares. And out of that, remember that, of course, in any keyboard, we only have the alphabet once. There's 26 of them. So once I want to spell, like, say, Jonathan out, I need more than one keyboard to get all the vowels and the repeat characters. So, once you start filtering that out, you really realize that out of a keyboard, I only have about 40 usable keys per keyboard out of 101. So it whittles down very quickly. But on top of that, with 3 different manufacturers, these pegs weren't the same.
Oh, sure.
So then I had to sort them again and decide on what peg I wanted to use so that everything's uniform.
Wow.
So I've sorted through these more than I really
Are you like a super organized mentally person, or because like obviously art is kind of free flowing, but like what you're talking about, same thing over and over and over again, like that takes fortitude.
I mean, as an editor, you have to be, of course, organized. So, it's funny how there's the parallels between how you prepare for a shoot or an edit or those kinds of things, organizing your footage and your takes and all those things. And really what a project like this has kind of reminded me of, because, initially at face value, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just going to get a bunch of keyboards and I'm going to make this mosaic and hide all these sayings, and it'll just, it's going to come together like this. And then you get each one of those curves thrown in, like, oop, can't use this because they're not the right size. Can't use this because they're not the right peg. Can only use so many of this, or your balance is off artistically. So there's there's that mental side of it that's not free flowing, that until you do it doesn't allow you to be free flowing and creative, So you kind of have to get through that stage to then do the part that is the creative part, and then back and forth. So yeah, it's very interesting in that sense that even this art does have its math, if you will.
The first full-time job I had after I worked at DPhilms was at a company called the Geo Group in Madison. They do a translation agency, and I was in the AV department as a video and motion graphics editor, but I would get project files from other companies given to us to then go into and put in the translations, whether it was the audio or the text and stuff like that. And there are editors who are not organized.
No,
I'm not like, it's not like my top like skill set. I'm not just like, oh, I'm all about organization, but holy cow, I'm definitely not like you're just going through and it's like comp one, V2, comp, like
new, untitled, new, old, new.
All these like After Effects files just chucked in there, just thrown in, and you're like,
and that phenomenon, of course, is nothing new. I mean, whether you use Premiere or Final Cut or Avid. I mean, what we've always jokingly called the skyscraper phenomenon, when you inherit someone's edit and it looks, there's so many layers stacked over and over each other rather than them actually deciding on a shot. And so, there were times when we had inherited some projects from another client that were, vintage. They hadn't really done a lot with them, but they wanted us to have them for safekeeping and then rebuild them at some point. And, I would open them up and these projects would take like 5 minutes to open. I'm like, how much footage what's going on? And then I see the sequence and it's like, I mean, it's a Manhattan skyline, because they never committed to the cuts. So by the time you actually squash it all down and you really realize you only have like 2 layers, but yeah, I'm like, oh my gosh, how did they ever get anything done? But we have those days where we have to kind of do that when we're still like working on a project, we're trying to make up our mind and trying to get some things from the client. But these were like, final approved files. And I'm going, I can't imagine how long these took to open back on the machine they originally made these on, because I think they probably could have gone to lunch and come back and it still wouldn't have been open.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, I mean, I learned a lot of the editing techniques from you. I do very little editing these days. We've got 2 editors in our edit suite, and they're both great, using good organization tools and stuff. But I think I do remember being fascinated by watching you go through B-roll and laying in shots into the timeline that you wanted, just as you went, instead of like doing the layered thing that I think everybody kind of does in like school. Because it's that decision making where you have that fear of committing to a shot or something, committing to an idea.
Exactly.
And yeah.
Oh yeah, and we've all been there, and it all depends upon, I mean, it comes down to things like, how quickly do we have to work? What kind of a timeline are we under? And, I'm sure if I actually if I could even load them, look at some of my early and first Avid sequences from college, they would look, much different than how I would approach them now, for sure. But I think it also helps remind us, how much we grow and change as professionals, and it's always cool to see how the things that are similar, and maybe ways we approach work or stylistically, but it also shows us certainly how far we've come, maybe unlike our wardrobes, apparently.
Yeah, may our editing styles never stay stagnant like our wardrobes.
Exactly.
There's a t-shirt under this. I can go to the t-shirt.
But yeah, and again, I'm not saying that as any type of like, knock or anything, because everybody has their way to get to the destination. And that's the cool thing that nonlinear editing has allowed us to do is, there are 101 ways to that finish line. And at the end of the day, as long as you get there and things are, technically rock solid, and you've, made the client happy, and you've met your deadline and you're on budget, it really doesn't matter, it does matter when you do share files and you want to make things as easy and as collaborative as possible. You kind of want to make sure that as professionals and as artists that, you don't have anything else standing in your way, that you can get down to business and, pick up where the other person left off or vice versa and, just go. So yeah, it is. You're right, Jonathan. It's that whole thing of, in your mind, you're like, well, if I put this shot in, I won't be able to put this other shot in. And it's more that you're just, you're almost thinking ahead of yourself, as opposed to just, hey, commit to this shot. You can always come back and tweak it. You can always come back in and add another one. But for right now, put the good shot in and let's keep going,
Well, that's that. I mean, you bring up, because I don't think a lot of people have the experience of working on, I never worked on tape other than in school, just to learn how to do reel-to-reel with film.
Right.
But most people don't have that experience in their editing software. So they've never had to choose, like, this is the moment that I'm going to, be in. But it's also, like, not destructive now. Like, yeah, like, just edit the thing, like, cut the timeline, and then if you don't like it, just recut it completely tomorrow. Like,
yeah. And even at that, you're gonna anyway. I mean, the next day when I sit down at an edit, I thoroughly expect to change something or look at something and go, what was I thinking yesterday? Because, you've had that time to process it, differently. You've had that time to just come to terms with what you did and go back and maybe not be so pissed off about it or whatever was eating at you yesterday, kind of a thing. But, I must admit, I got really lucky in the sense of that transition between tape and nonlinear, because I learned tape in high school and that's all we had. And I learned it through part of college, and that transition happened. And I am so glad that I never had to deal with tape in my professional career in terms of linear editing, because, I think I would probably have like pulled all of my hair out and left the business very quickly. But I was fortunate enough to understand the quirks of both ends, have that working with physical dials and things, and wrapping your brain around your work in different ways, but then also being able to go, oh yeah, I can just put this thing in here as a placeholder and it's okay. I don't have to be so concrete right now. And I can work on this other part of the timeline down here and come back. Whereas before you couldn't do that. You were literally putting one block in front of the other, in front of the other. And if a client made a change, you're starting all the way over from this point, and things that, man, I don't miss. I mean, I don't miss tape for sure. I love working with files. You move them around, you load them. There's no tape snags. There's no dropouts. There's not the labor of sitting through in real time, a tape and, all of those things. I don't miss any of that.
I wonder what the next major development could be, because we have tape and you think of or film, and you think about Star Wars, and they're multiple exposure, sometimes there's 10 layers that they expose because they have a background, and then they have a negative cutout, and then they have the positive cutout with the actual, little miniature in it, and amazing technology at the time and ingenuity. Now we can do that much more simply with clicks and After Effects and these tools that help us get much further, much faster. Do you have any sense of where editing's going?
Yeah. If I did, I wouldn't have this job. That's for sure, right? I would be ruler, the grand poobah of the film and editing unit. No, I don't think anybody, at least none of us do anyway. It's interesting though, because when you look at the core of things, even though the medium has changed in terms of whether you're talking about tape to digital, or you're talking about things like you said with, eliminating the number of layers, things that you can do in real time with green screen or virtual sets or virtual backgrounds. There's always that yin to the yang. And so while we've eliminated those things, we also do spend more time nitpicking. We do spend more time thinking about, for example, the right background, behind something that's green screen, or what color palette we're using when we're doing a corporate piece, let's say, for example, and those types of things. And obviously too, then also our timeline shortened, because the assumption is, well, you're doing it all on the computer now, so it must be quicker and faster and better. And, there is, just because we've saved work on one side of the production doesn't mean we've necessarily saved work on the other side. They kind of trade off at times. I think for, the industry as a whole, I think as things get to be more toward real time, I think the thing that's going to really change is that integration between, editing and motion graphics even more. I mean, I've wished for years that After Effects and Premiere would just go, and just really finely merge, because on a given project anymore, there's no such thing in a project I do as having just a Premiere project or just an After Effects project. When I'm working on anything, I always have both, and I'm always working between the two. And so, the more that I can make that into one convenient, package, or a better one, I should say, it's gonna be a better result in the end. Same is true if you use, Final Cut or Avid or any of those. That I think we're gonna see more and more merging of programs as the demands from clients change, and as the demands and use of these things change. I mean, I could say the same for Illustrator and Photoshop. That yes, Photoshop does have its realm its use when you're talking about photographs. But when you look at what a lot of people do with compositing and explainer videos and character animations and all those things, you're blending both. Trying to make it look, realistic with realistic backgrounds and photographs, but then you have vector-based art that needs to come into that. And, they all got to play in the same space. And, there's times when you wish you had these tools and these tools right in the same spot. It just doesn't work that way right now.
Right. It's funny too. We were a Premiere house forever. And within the last 6 months, maybe, we switched over to Resolve,
Yep.
DaVinci Resolve.
Yep.
And there's a couple things that kind of led to it. One is Premiere has just been struggling over the last several years now that it can do everything for everyone with doing just simple, specific things. So we were having playback issues with stuff that we used to not have playback issues.
Sure.
Files would get corrupted and then we couldn't open them, so we'd have to open an autosave or things like that. The Lumetri color panel, just not super satisfied with, and we would always do Final Color in Resolve. And now Resolve is trying to do that. They have their color suite. Now they have the editing, and they've edited, the last 6 months in there and been very happy with it. It's very smooth. The playback harkens to like an Avid, like machine, like system, not just software, but like, a whole Avid system. And then now there's also the compositing tool, which is fully integrated in there as well. So they can just be in DaVinci and switch between those tasks, and it just links and it just works. And it's, and for us, the organization has been really nice as well, because we recently set up the DaVinci Resolve editing server. So now they can finish something, I can jump in and look at color, and if there's any fixes I need, just tweak them and save it, and then they can do a final render without having to open things on their machine, transfer things. It's still, I don't know, we're a third of the way to having that server fully realized, but even those steps are better than what it was before, where I was like, okay, you got to get off your computer so I can come do work on your computer, just to do 10 minutes of color or something like that.
Right. Let me interrupt you to interrupt me to interrupt you.
Yeah. Whereas now I'm like, are you in there? No. Okay. I'm going to jump in real quick. I did my thing. You're good to go.
Yeah. And that's a big part of it too. Just working smart. And granted, every place has its ebb and flow, like you said, whether it's Resolve, it is Avid, it's Final Cut, it's whatever, just like any other tool, you got to go with what meets your needs and your demands to get it done. And, everybody has their reasons, whether, like you said, in your case, it's a technical one of, hey, it doesn't work with our files, or, corrupt files, of course, are the worst thing in the world, because that means, you have trash, you have nothing to work with. Other places it's because maybe they've got twice as many people working on it and they're not even, in the same place. How do you solve that? Or they grew up with Avid and they want to stay with Avid. Go for it, get it done, get it done. I mean, because at the end of the day, as much as we sometimes like to get, really gear geeky, nobody goes and watches a movie and goes, I can tell that was edited on an Avid.
Right.
It doesn't, it's not the same as when you look at like glass and you look at cameras where they do have a distinct personality. The personality in an edit suite only comes from the human behind it. I mean, that's really where it is. And so I always look at it as, you can tell who edited it, but you can't necessarily tell what it was edited on.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Because I'll watch stuff and I'll be like, "Ooh, GoPro shot. Ooh, this is, that's an Alexa. This kind of feels like red." So I can kind of tell camera technology, but I've never been like, "Ooh, Final Cut 7 or Final Cut X."
John, Ryan, you have to see this film because it was cut on Final Cut 10.
Yeah. Right now. The transitions are so abrupt, and
the page wipe
fades are so smooth.
The best.
Let's be honest, nothing's been cut on Final Cut X since it came out.
I would guarantee somebody, they paid somebody to do it. I don't know if anyone would necessarily choose, but I mean that's maybe that idea of like, where are we going with editing, like Final Cut X. I don't know how much experience you've had with that, Ryan, but we've had a little of like projects we've inherited that we need to use X on. But it's kind of weird because I don't remember what they specifically are, but there's a couple different paradigms in there, whether it's cutting in a different way or file management or something. And it's their attempt at simplifying something that's overcomplicated, but maybe for dinosaurs who don't want to do it differently, it just feels wrong.
And again, it's all in your approach too. I mean, because, we obviously are looking at it like, seasoned professionals, in the sense that we've kind of experimented with some of those. But, I do find that it has its place for people who say, hey, iMovie's not enough for me. And I've thought about that, but I also know I don't want to dive into the realm of Avid, Resolve, Premiere in that ecosystem, because I'm just trying to do things in a sense. Or you tell that to someone who's working in a corporate environment who, they've come from a graphic design or other elements, and it's easiest for them to wrap their brains around. And that's awesome, because if it helps them make that transition to thinking about the moving frame and thinking about timing and where things go, once you start developing that, then you that's when you outgrow your suite. You go, I'm thinking more than the software is. So I need new software. Maybe that is Resolve. Maybe that is Premiere or Avid or whatever it is. And you evolve again. I mean, I've used 4 or 5 different NLEs over the years in different forms. And, the hardest part about them is breaking your old habits. It's not learning the software. You know how to edit. It's remembering that the H key doesn't do what it used to do. Or when I click here under edit or whatever, or format or whatever's at the top, that I get different menu choices. Or when I right click, what happens? It has nothing to do with that you don't understand how to drag and drop and mark ins and outs and those things. It's that the tools are shaped differently and they work differently.
Yeah.
I think, one of the things that we have seen some, and we have to be sensitive to when we're shooting stuff too, in terms of where the future of editing is going or what people are doing with it, is there's always been the joke in the industry about fix it in post. But more and more, it's like, do the whole project in post.
Bingo.
I think that's something that is interesting to figure out. Like we talked about doing Resolve because of the color correction. We're a small business. We don't have a separate colorist. It's not another person's job to do the next part of the thing. For that matter, we don't even have a separate animator. Jeff, our lead editor, is our main animator too.
Yep.
So, while I don't know, there's something there about the direction that the power that is available in the edit suite, but then something we also need to pay attention to is in terms of responsibility about who needs to be making sure that the white balance, refocusing in post or whatever, if we start getting into that kind of thing.
One of my college professors, had the 2 greatest lines that I still use. And the first one is, technology giveth and technology taketh away. The other question you always ask about a new tool or a new piece of equipment or a new feature is feature, because we all know we don't always get to use it, is what problem is it designed to solve? And what problem does it create? Because there's always a drawback. And, you're exactly right that, we hear that a lot. And we also, of course, it's become just fix my white balance in post. Okay, well, if you just re-white balance now, that takes you 20 seconds and you're done. I recorrect that over 200 edits. That takes me 4 hours. And so I think a lot of it is kind of keeping that dialogue open in terms of, what role we all play in the ecosystem, and that, real time and practical still beats manual clicking and tweaking any day of the week, whatever that is. And so, the basics never go away. Got to be in focus, got to be white balanced, all those things, got to be composed reasonably well. But, we know that there are times when, composition's right, but I want to stabilize the shot a little more. Okay, cool. Made a tweak. But when you've got to stabilize 2.5 hours of GoPro footage, it gets a little tiring after a while.
Yeah. And I wonder too, if it's, advances in technology make it somewhat more accessible in that focus, or, you shoot raw, you can change all the settings in post. if that makes it more accessible just as a tool for people who don't have experience. And, you know, I think there's pros and cons to that, but overall, I think it's, you know, I think it's pro that more people get into it, because I don't necessarily think it's competition in that they can do what I can do, but I think that there's more people creating good content. And when, you know, we have a community of people who are just creating better and better and excelling more, it's going to encourage us all to excel and learn and do better. So, you know, some people might be like, oh, well, they're going to, you know, take jobs away because now they can do it with their little DSLR. Well, that was us, you know, in 2008, where we picked up the 5D Mark II and we could shoot something that looked like it was a national spot.
And then I lost 60 clients to Jonathan. I know. It was
there you
go.
And then you guys kept doing better, and then we keep doing better, and you know, it makes the community better, I think.
Well, and again, you know, at the end of the day, the tool changed, but the idea, like you said, creating good content never goes away. You know, a good piece, no matter what era it was made in, or you know, any of those things, you always can recognize the good pieces through, you know, a given set of decades or years, or even as you guys would go back and look at your own work, you're like, that was a good project. That was a good project. And, you know, it didn't matter if you were using, you know, a Canon DSLR at the time. It didn't matter if you were using a Pocket Cinema camera or an a Red, or an Alexa, either one. But, you know, just that at the end of the day, a good piece is a good piece. And people are gonna, you know, consume it, share it, enjoy it, no matter what. So, you know, that's really, I think, it. And you're right. You know, accessibility, I don't think has ever been a barrier, because, you know, that just lets ideas flow, and you're going to get somebody who's going to come out with something really, really cool, and they're going to kind of, you know, tip that scale, where then people start copying. And, you know, the old saying, you know, that somebody copying you is the best form of flattery, because you realize that you've kind of tipped that paradigm a little bit. You know, I mean, how many things we're all doing trap code particular at one time because it was the cool plugin, you know, or Shine, you know, and all those things. Or, you know, you can always tell those things that kind of tipped the design or influenced design along the way, or, you know, speed ramps and all those things. And at some point we'll stop doing them. And whatever comes next, whether it's that, you know, Jonathan finally gets a new plaid shirt, whatever it is, something will tip the messaging, and we'll all be doing it, you know.
Oh man,
it'll be
ranting at home tonight.
I'm curious, how did you get into editing? You had said that you've been working at DPhilms for 17 years.
Yeah.
Were you editing before that, or when was college? And
I mean,
how'd you get into it?
I mean, in terms of the whole business, or just editing?
Just editing, you know, like were you in high school editing stuff and like, this is what I'm going to do to live?
I'm just going to go out there and
here we go.
Yeah. And you got to do it in that voice too, right? I mean, learned how to do all of that in high school. You know, we had to shoot our own stuff and all that kinds of stuff. So we were involved on both ends. But initially, when I started I was fortunate enough to get a job running studio cameras at a local TV station. And, you know, big thing is I just wanted to break into the business. I wanted to get in and learn and, you know, just be a sponge. And so initially I actually thought I was going to be more on the camera side. I thought, you know, more of the director of photography and things, and really crafting that. But my production manager, one day I was just sitting talking with him about all kinds of things. And he had seen some of the stuff I was messing with on the side, some of the stuff I was working with in college at the time. And he's like, you're a better editor than you are a shooter. And he said, I'm not saying that to, no, he's like, I'm not saying that in a bad way. He's like, you know, you approach your work so much more as an editor first than the way that a director of photography would approach their work. And you're already thinking about the end result, and you're already thinking about all the other layers that go into it after it's shot. And so, you know, it's just kind of one of those, you kind of take that step back and you're like, okay. And, you know, you kind of toss it away for a little bit, but especially as I started to learn After Effects and messed with more than one NLE. You know, at that time it was Avid or Media 100. Those were your choices, and you know, really could see how I could take that same series of shots and assemble it one way and influence an audience one direction, and rearrange it and make people feel differently. That was just a really cool feeling. Like, wow, I'm actually kind of, you know, I'm really swaying the audience here. I'm letting them and making them feel something, you know, in this process. And it seems so much cooler than just nitpicking over whether or not I got the perfect jib shot, you know, if you will. So, you know, and then with After Effects, it was just fun to make things move and blow up, and you know, you know, it's always fun to, you know, explosions and things like that. You can never argue with that.
Yeah. Did you, are you familiar with Andrew Kramer here with videocopilot.net?
.net.
You watch all those.
Andrew Kramer. And of course, you always have to have, if I could sidebar with a really, you know, bad Andrew Kramer story at the beginning, right? Because you always got to have the story that goes nowhere and then come back. But, you know, Andrew Kramer and before him, Brian Moffat, I believe, he was the guy who had all the After Effects training series. He was originally on VHS and then on DVD. But I mean, I give full props to those guys because they really helped break down that barrier to motion graphics, and, you know, really break down the idea that this stuff was overly, I mean, yes, it can be complicated, but give everyone that chance that, you know, it can be accessible and you can start at a ground level, but you still feel like you're doing projects that are meaningful, things that are useful, instead of just, you know, here's how to rotate a clock hand. You know, you know, you look at Andrew's stuff and, you know, you've got everything from, you know, 3-dimensional rooms and camera tracking to set extensions and things that they're just useful. You're going to get asked to do that. You're going to have to do it at some point in your career. And that, I think, really, really helped a lot of people walk into After Effects unintimidated and more confident. And I think really helped them level up and become more well-rounded. Like we said, we don't have the luxury, I don't either, of having a separate colorist, a separate animator, compositor, and those things. I mean, I have to think and concept through that project before it's shot and then deal with it after it's shot. And so the more that I can keep those pieces together, you know, the better that project's going to go. So, you know, and Andrew Kramer also showed that, you know, you can give away a trade secret, if you will, and they're not, and still be a successful business person, still have street cred, and still get called for jobs. You know, there's always that thing of, well, if you share too many secrets, everybody's going to take your secrets. No, that's not true. It's still collaborative. It's still, you know.
And the only thing that ever changed was that some of the companies that were charging a magical premium of, you know, line items that nobody really understood had to cut back on those.
Yeah, they had to, you know, the unicorn and fairy dust fee had to kind of come down a little bit. Right? But
the industry didn't, you know, go away, because there's always been more and more need, and we just saw it. Like, I'd say it all the time, but like, everybody's carrying around a video screen in their pocket now. So like, we just had an explosion of need for video. It's like the need for it, the growth of the industry made it so that the up and comer didn't completely unseat the bigger, more established company. Those companies may have had to, you know, adapt a little bit to try to stay on the new cutting edge of things. But yeah, like that fear of sharing secrets, you know, trade secrets, is kind of a funny one.
I think he also helped people realize that you don't have to be ashamed of your budget, because, you know, a lot of the things that he was working on the side, he was doing on the side, truly on the side. They would, you know, grab their DSLRs, you know, there's the one, the tutorial where he's got his buddy and he's green screen like he's driving. And of course, the whole tutorial is to take the green screen out and make it look like you've got a city scene, going behind him. And, that's just something that you can knock off in an afternoon with a buddy in a car. Let's just go do it. And that you didn't need, 20 grips and all this lighting and all these things to make something that's reasonable. And that there were people who, like us, all have to deal within reason at some point, budgets that are much, much different than, say, Hollywood. And really was able to show people that, you may not have a $200,000 budget. You may not have a $50,000 budget. You may not even have a $10,000 budget. But, with some simple tools and enough, enough planning and enough, elbow grease, enough sweat in the game, you can make something that's reasonable and be happy with it and deliver that to your clients. And they're going to be, reasonably happy too.
Yeah.
So
there's that page.
I don't know if it's been updated in the last several years, but the tutorials are still super relevant and helpful for gaining confidence.
There's a broad tie-in that I was thinking about. It's like this at the intersection of art and business, where you've got timelines and budgets and things like that, that it allows, if you've got a long timeline, if you can spend a long time assembling keys from random keyboards, you can
tying it back.
Oh, wow.
If you can,
Eddie's brought it back, folks.
If you can take a long time, like working with the footage, you can turn a lot of like lower budget stuff into amazing things, without the big budget, like you said. If you've got the ability, the time to do it, sometimes you're having to like balance that because there's a deadline. But
right, I have a saying with a lot of my clients that if you talk to your accountant and he said you're in the red, you wouldn't argue with him because your accountant is your numbers guy. And you wouldn't go to the Louvre and sit and look at the Mona Lisa or Starry Night and go, if you just would have painted a little more blue here, a little more red here. But you take an accountant and you take a painter and you smash them together, you have our business. Because, everybody like, well, are you sure that we're are you sure we're over budget? Are you, can you just trim? But the difference being is that at the end of the day, it's their money and their image that we're working with and not our own. But it really is interesting when you look at the terms of like the absolutes, this end and this end, but you smash two absolutes together and you get something that's very abstract. And so, we deal with that every day, that it's not quite as clear as black and white, and we have to kind of operate in all those grays.
I like what you said too earlier about making people unafraid or giving confidence, because that's what it was for me with like Video Copilot. You see these movies and you're like, I could never do that because I've seen behind the scenes of Star Wars and I could never do that. But then Andrew Kramer is like, hey, let me show you in 10 minutes how we can do something kind of similar. It's not exactly the same, but it's pretty darn close. And you have the tools right now. So go get creating,
Exactly.
That's such a positive message.
That's right.
We are at about 1:15, so I did want to save a little bit of time for our game. I know I want to grill you more about editing, but we'll have to do that in Ryan Orr Part 2. So now let's see if I can get this up.
Oh, wait, so there's a part 2? So this is where I go, folks, make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons so that you don't miss another episode.
Hit the bell. Yeah. For more Ryan Orr, tune in tonight at 10 p.m. when we show up at his house.
You'll never guess what happens next.
Oh, dun, dun, dun. Yeah.
Cut. So we're going to play Two Truths and a Lie. Gave you a heads up beforehand, so hopefully you created some things. We'll start with John and myself first, and we'll save you for last. So, John, did you prep at all for this? If not, I can go because I prepped.
Why don't you go? I got to think about one more thing here.
Yeah. So part of this game that I'm always prepping, and after I do mine, you'll go first, Ryan, since I got to try to trick John because he kind of knows a lot of my stories.
Ooh, tough one.
But part of it is I steal John's stories and then I tell them as my own. And we see what's the lie and what's not the lie.
So creative plagiarism in this case only because he's in the room with us. So,
yes,
right?
yes. And anybody who's watched a previous episode hopefully can make the connection. So, all right, here we go. Number 1, I won my high school talent show called Mr. Bradford High School, with a song that I wrote several days in advance. So that's my first one. The second one, I performed with rockapella back in college. So that's number 2. And number 3 is that I played the trumpet in high school. So I went kind of simple with them. All kind of musical. I should have chose some upcycle-y type of stories, but
you had one job, Ryan. You had one job, babe.
My upcycle is that my wife she buys a lot of used clothes, and it's fantastic.
Oh boy. So wait. So I have to decide which one of these that are actually John's lies or which ones that you're lying about that are Jonathan's.
Yeah. So these are my stories, and one of these is a lie. I just happen to shape them like John's told in the past.
Okay. I'm going to go with that number 2 is a lie.
That I performed with rockapella.
Mm-hmm.
All right, good guess. Johnny, what do you got? And those at home, you got to let us know. What do you think?
Okay. I think it's the first one because I won the talent show with a song written 2 days.
So you're totally busted on that one.
I don't know if you forgot that was mine. But sometimes he has a story that actually is very similar, and he tricks me because it sounds like mine, and then I call him out, and it's like, actually, I did do that. Those other things, I'm pretty sure.
When you can't remember each other's lies, that's getting pretty bad, isn't it?
When John tells his stories, I write them down to try to say the exact same thing on a different episode. So I did, in fact, sing with rockapella back in college. That was really cool. That was also that was going to be my third one. I also sang a song. I'm a bass, and I had lead on fa fa, and we started like a step and a half high. For some reason, whoever was starting us off just jumped the gun and got us a step and a half high. So I'm just like squeezing out these notes to try to sing, and I'm like so embarrassed because the crowd is so big for rockapella, and
just like I'm that like, too. Where you
my gosh,
just feeling the notes there.
Oh my gosh, so bad. It probably was all right, but my memory's terrible. I did play trumpet, so that was easy. So next time, I just got to make sure that my lie is not what you expect, because I was in a competition my senior year. It was Mr. Bradford. It was the talent show, like for seniors. I did not win, but I did make a song, several days in advance that we performed then. It was a mashup of a bunch of our favorite songs, and it was really, really fun. But I didn't win. So I should have told the story as a truth, and then you would have thought, hey, that's my story. And then you still would have guessed it. So good guesses, though. That's 1 for John, 0 for Ryan's. All right, John, you're up. I see him furiously typing.
Well, I get distracted listening to your story, and then I'm like,
perfect. My plan is complete.
Like, I can't think of 3 items about myself.
Okay. And then you think of 3 lies or 3 truths.
Yeah, and then I just screw up the game.
Yeah.
All right. One of my first production tasks was to assist in the butchering of cattle for a prestigious doctor. Number 2. I once crashed a car on the way to a shoot, still made it in time, and had 0 repercussions. Number 3. One time in New York City, I was mistaken for a Texan due to my plaid shirt.
Oh, boy. Man. Okay. I'm going to say that number 1 is the lie.
Butchering cattle. Good guess. So, and you can ask clarifying questions too, Ryan.
Oh, okay. Was it the same shirt that you have on now, John?
I did. It might have been.
No, I'm going to go with number 1. I'll stick with that one.
You had to butcher the cattle for the shoot?
I had to assist.
Yeah. Crashed a car on the way to a shoot, still made it. That happened. And one time in New York, mistaken for a Texan due to a plaid shirt. I'm going to go with that one. That seems too much, too convenient for this discussion.
All right. Well, congratulations, Ryan. Ryan Orr has it right.
Oh,
my first production tasks
this way
was helping to prod cattle down a chute for an orthopedic hand surgeon.
Orthopedic, a company that we work with that makes magnification loops for eye glasses.
And well, it's not that far away. A hand surgeon whose hobby was roping cattle. That was a shoot with DPhilms, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
That was a good one.
I had forgotten that you were on that shoot. That's right. Yes.
Yeah. That's right. Actually, one of my first, I was going to tie this in, but one of my first ones was the Hyundai shoot where we basically, it was super fun because it was like, all right, everybody, pick a car.
Yep.
Just pick a new car and drive it over to where we're going to shoot, and we'll go back and do it again.
Yep.
So
we had to set up our fake showroom and the whole thing that day. That's right.
Nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, one time I crashed a car on the way to a shoot. It was snowy. I think it was like in the break between New Year's, and
was that Barry made?
It was
of course
some sort of cleaning service.
Yeah.
But we exchanged information. They were like, we're not going to wait. I can't wait around or whatever. And they left and nothing ever came of it. I hope they're not watching today with my admission. Nothing came of it. I think.
And we're just putting up John's personal info right now in case you need to get out.
I think I caught something shady going on. There were two vehicles, a boss and an employee, and they were headed in the same direction on a holiday. It was like a federal holiday in the winter, and they were going to clean a business. I happened to accidentally run into one of them. I couldn't get the trailer stopped.
And you hear voices in the trunk going, "Sir, can you let us out?"
And yes, in New York City one time, I was there with Amanda and some of our friends, and some other people came up to us and were like, "Are you guys from Texas?"
I'm gonna need Amanda to confirm that you had a plaid shirt.
Yeah, like no,
and boots.
I just don't know how to dress myself.
You're like, statistically, I probably had a plaid shirt.
Yeah. I think it might have been this one.
Nice. All right. So that's one for Ryan. What is that? I don't even remember the first score.
I'm not stretching it too. I know I was wearing a plaid shirt because we talked about it amongst our group. But I think it's because Aaron Wimmer was there too, and we're like, I
Uh,
think it's because of the shirts we're wearing. Like, we don't know what is the current style in New York.
V-neck.
Just try to blend in,
just
everybody.
a V-neck.
Real deep V-neck. Just down there.
All right, so we got
Uh.
Ryan Orr's got one, John's got one. Now it's your turn.
All right.
Ryan.
Okay, here we go. So once I had to strategically place a microphone on Richard Simmons. That's the first one. Second one is that I own a design patent. Third one is that I have had the great opportunity to have lunch with Mike Rowe.
All right, so third one is having lunch with Mike Rowe.
Mm-hmm.
The second one is you have a patent.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one is a mic on Gene Simmons.
Richard Simmons. Oh, Gene Simmons. Gene Simmons would be equally as awful.
Yeah, I do like that it's Richard Simmons better.
Yeah. Interesting family, the Simmons.
Yes.
The Simmons is
very broad.
Ooh, all right, so I'll go first since I know you the least. 1 and 3 are great because one of them's true, and it'd be hard to tell which one is not true. Number 2, I feel like you would own a patent. You know, you're a very crafty person. What did you say? It was a specific patent? What was it for?
A design patent.
It was a design patent. Did you say what it was for?
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay. Not going to share. I think number 2 is true. I'm going to go with lunch. I'm going to say you didn't have lunch with Mike Rowe. That's my guess.
Okay, Mr. Jonathan.
Yeah, it's always the possibility of the technicalities. Like, aha! I actually had breakfast with him. I think it could be that you don't have a design patent because that would throw us for a loop. We would say,
ooh, because of exactly what I just did.
He's got to have a design patent because of all his design. I mean, it's possible. It's so hard to come up with specific lies like that with like celebrities or something. I feel like maybe the American Pickers or something like Mike Rowe seems very feasible. You would have done that. And then Gene Simmons seems just like Richard Simmons.
He's coming back to Gene Simmons.
One time I had to help Gene Simmons put a mic on Richard Simmons.
For a Simmons beauty rest ad, right? We'll just make it 3 Simmons, right?
I'm going with the design. Going with the design patent. You don't have it.
All right. Well, Mr. Ryan is correct. I have not had lunch with Mike Rowe.
Nice.
That is the one. I'd love to have lunch with Mike, but I have not had the chance to do so.
Nice.
So,
have you ever been on set or a shoot with him, or was that just one you pulled out?
No, I haven't actually. But I've always admired, how with Dirty Jobs and those things, just that whole idea in terms of reality show, especially versus a lot of the things that were, on at the time, like The Bachelor, just still on, showing how people really work. And especially now with his, initiative in terms of that, you don't have to go to med school or pursue a 4-year degree to be a successful person and have a meaningful career path and a lucrative career path. That trades matter, as we all know. We still rely on electricians and tradesmen, just like anything else. We're kind of that blend too. We're half tradesmen and half professional. And so I think that whole initiative has been really cool. I just always thought, he'd be one of those people you want to have beers with. You want to have lunch with, and just you could just talk about a lot of the really cool things and get straight answers and, all that kind of stuff, and just really be on the level.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and maybe get roped into some dirty jobs.
Possibly.
Speaking of dirty jobs, you put a mic on Richard Simmons.
So that story. Okay. So when early in my career, when I was working in broadcast news, the TV station I was working for at the time sponsored a women's lifestyle fair, which they still do in some way. And so each year they would bring in one celebrity. They brought in celebrities from like Days of Our Lives and all kinds of different things each year. So one year it was Richard Simmons. I was still working floor crew, and actually I was working double shifts at the time, so I was picking up extra money. Because of that tie-in, the celebrity would be on for each of the newscasts for different things. So you have your morning show, your noon, and then your nightly, evening stuff. So morning show comes on, and in true fashion, Richard comes in, and I mean, the place is just a buzz. He is just hilarious in so many ways. When Richard Simmons is in the room. And anyway, we do pre-show stuff, do some rundown stuff, and we get ready. And audio guy comes in, he's like, "Hey, I need you to get Richard mic'd up. We gotta go." And so grab a microphone, go over and grab a mic, grab a pack. And then it dawns on me, he's in spandex. He's got on a tank top.
All of it.
He's got on a tank top, and he's got on spandex shorts and high tops. And I'm going, I have no place for this microphone. And he can kind of sense in my eyes, like, I don't know what I'm 17 at the time. I'm just looking at him like, I don't know where I'm going to put this thing. And he literally grabs the side of the spandex and goes like this, and he goes, "Let's just drop it in and go." So I drop the mic pack in. He lets go. It suctions to the side of his hip, and he goes, "We're ready. Let's do this." And so all we were worried about the whole show, because he's very animated, very unpredictable. I'm like, as long as it stays put and it doesn't move into an opportune place, doesn't fall out, we are good.
My gosh.
So, then after the show, of course, he jokingly, he's taunting me in between. He goes, "Just wait, you got to come get this microphone." And we're talking trash. We're just talking all kinds of things. But oh my gosh, it's just one of those things that, early on in your career, you start, developing that skin that you're going to see a lot of things.
Yeah.
And that was at the time, the first one. So yes.
That's great, especially too being so young, and he's jumping around and it falls down in front of him, and they're like, "Ryan, what did you do?"
That's exactly what I was waiting for, because I knew he'd call me out on air, and I'm like, great, half a million people will just have heard me get called out by Richard Simmons. It's going to be a good day. It's going to be a good day.
Totally worth it. So I do have your. I believe this is your URL, Reform Designs.
Yes, it is.
Is there anything else you wanted to plug as we wrap up here?
I've never been much of a person for a shameless plug. Just like this, I've always just been, one of those that's approachable. It's one of those things that, hey, you got questions, you just want to talk biz, you have an idea, you want to talk anything. I'm always willing to share ideas, always willing to have fun about it. So, call me at the number on your screen below. No, but no, hey, get in touch, check out my work. I mean, it's just one of those, as an artist, you like to share and you like to show people what's possible. So.
And I think the other one I don't have a card for, but they can see your editing work on DPhilms website.
Yep. DPhilms.com, DPhilms.com. And we also have a YouTube channel that I am still updating nonetheless, but we'll update soon.
Perpetually behind. At least that's what we are.
That's right. When you're busy, you're always behind, right?
Yeah. Awesome. Well, next week, let's see. We probably have something. I should have looked that up before we got to this segment. You should definitely tune in. It's going to be awesome, I'm sure. Another happy hour. You can always watch previous happy hours in the playlist down below. As Ryan said, click the things, hit the button, do the bell.
Yeah.
But the closest one may be behind you.
Yeah. Yeah. Or that's somebody looking at you through the window. John, anything else that we have? to share.
Send all your old computers to Ryan Orr. That's
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what kind of computer. Send it to Ryan.
Ship them down.
Nice.
You can find his address at reformdesigns.com. Ryan, thank you so much for coming on. It was a real blast. Like I said, we'll have to do part 2 where we can actually dig in a little bit more.
Let's do it.
And have another happy hour together. Thanks, man.
All right. Thanks for having me. We'll see you.
All right. And thanks. Oh, I got to do an end card. So I'm using a different tool. This is the fun part of live. Let's do this real quick. We always have different issues with the system, and we do this with clients, and there's never an issue with clients, but because we're doing it for ourselves,
the issue today is we can't leave. We can't.
That's right.
Yeah, there we go.
Leave.
See, I can do that, and then I just turn this off. So thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.